Welcome to the Food Professor Podcast, Season 4, Episode 12. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm the Food Professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Our special guest on this episode is Alex Green, Chief Experience and Marketing Officer, Longo's, Ontario grocer, regional grocer, part of the Empire Group, recorded live in person at the Coffee Association of Canada's conference in Toronto. Sylvain, I think Alex is our very first grocery marketer on the podcast, if I have that right. What do you think?
Yeah, I didn't realize that when we interviewed him, but really jazzy fellow, lots to talk about. I mean, he certainly understands his craft. Mm-hmm. It's not an aspect of the business I understand very well, but he looks the part. And I think he fits well with the culture at Longo's. So it was really a really nice chat altogether.
Yeah, it's an interesting blend, his role of both overall holistic experience and marketing. So it's a great conversation. And like I said, Longo's long-standing independent grocer that now has partnership with Empire. Going back a couple of years. So they got
that deal, that marriage seems to be working very well.
Yeah, I mean, they, the Empire being very smart. I mean, I guess their prior deal was with Farm Boy. This one's a little different. You know, they know well enough to leave it alone, basically.
That's right.
They bought it for a reason. They bought Farm Boy for a reason. And if you walked in Farm Boy today, you'd be a little hard-pressed to even know they're part of the Empire Group. Same with Longo's. You wouldn't know it. Other than Longo's had their own freestanding. They bought Grocery Gateway many, many years ago.
That's right.
Which is a great online for those not in the GTA, Greater Toronto area. Great online delivery service, and they've kind of folded.
Yeah, they were pioneers for Ontario.
Yeah, very much, and they both had a B2B side, and anyway, they folded that into the bigger Voila, which I'm sure makes a whole lot of sense for a whole lot of reasons. Anyway, so that's just one of the little things. I think that's the most obvious one, really, where you might know that they're part of Empire. But certainly walking the store, you don't. Very distinctive personality. Anyway, we'll get to our interview with Alex in a little bit later. So it's a big day for you today. It is the release. That's, it is a big, drum roll please, kind of day. The release of the Canada's Food Price Report 2024, the big kahuna, as I like to call it in terms of research. So let's start first of all. What's your day look like today? I mean, typically you get a lot of media buzz for the report. I'd imagine you're getting a whole lot today. We're going to get into a little bit about the report. I mean, as we were talking offline, if you haven't heard a news article about the report today, where are you living?
Exactly.
Maybe you're in solitary confinement somewhere, but other than that, I think you're going to hear about it. Now, you were off mic, you were saying you've already done some run-up to the report release interviews, and then what's the media consumption like? How many requests do you have? I guess you get pre-booked, and then people phone up. Give me a little bit of the tradecraft, so to speak, behind how many people are interested in hearing what you've got to say.
Oh, and once we have the product, the report, and it's been ready for, I'd say, about a week now, and both French and English. And then, of course, we sent out the report under embargo to people we trust, and there's a lot of them. I mean, media is trustworthy. When you actually send out a report under embargo, they absolutely trust that.
I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything about it.
Yeah, like they're very. I think that I had one breach one year, but it was very minimal. And but overall, very trustworthy. They've been very diligent, and since we've basically interviewed with most major networks. Actually, I would say probably all major networks and major newspapers. So we'll be in papers. We've been in papers today. I'm blessed with a really wonderful team this year. Typically, Michael, I'm stuck with doing all the interviews coast to coast because not many academics want to be in front of a camera. But this year, I'm really lucky. I think we have 9 or 10 people doing interviews altogether.
That's great.
And we started the day today with 57 pre-booked interviews.
57 pre-booked interviews. Wow. Yeah. Now, are all those in Canada? Because I know the report you get publicity outside of Canada as well.
Yeah, typically for overseas, it goes over next week. Like, so there's a lot of noise in Canada with the report, and typically you would basically get some attention from overseas after that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
anybody left at CBC to talk to? I mean, are you still doing interviews with them?
So the CBC they'll be looking at the report quite a bit tomorrow or today, and frankly, it's all network, CTV, Global, CBC, Radio Canada, French, TVA. I'm actually in Montreal today to cover most of the French, because I'm the only guy of the 30 co-authors. I'm the only one that actually can speak French. So
come on,
it is.
Are you? Do you still have that? Do you still have that gig on Salut Bonjour? Are you going on live? Or?
That's my first interview this morning. Yeah,
very good. And then you're going to be there live. You're going to be in studio, or are you doing
in person? Yeah.
Wow, I got to tune in. Fun.
Yeah. So it'll be fun, and so I'm lined up for a bunch of interviews for sure. And I mean, all of the work, the hard work is done. Typically, the release day it's more about having fun and enjoy and having conversations with people about the future of food. But I'll be honest with you, this year, I mean, the news is actually much better. It's in the last couple of years, it's been tough. We were predicting some higher numbers, higher food prices, and it wasn't easy to really tell people that it's going to be harder. And this year was particularly hard. Our forecast was accurate, but it was hard. So 2024, we're forecasting something that is going to be probably much more manageable for consumers, which is good news.
Right, so we could say a little easier to digest. Well, let's start. For those unfamiliar with the Canada Food Price Report, it is a joint effort. You're the lead author, I guess you describe yourself, but it is a joint effort of several institutions. So give us 30 seconds about who's involved in this and a little bit of the process, and then we'll get into the report itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, we have us, of course. We're the lead campus. We take care of the production of the report, and we're accompanied by the University of Guelph in Ontario. Our lead there is Evan Fraser, who actually happens to be in Dubai this week. Stuart Smith is our lead over at the University of Saskatchewan, and our last partner is the University of British Columbia. And Kayleen Wiseman is our lead there, and they have a really good team over there. So we wanted a coast to coast effort to kind of basically grasp different food realities across the country, because when you travel across the country, food is not the same thing. It really changes from one place to another. So and it works. I mean, I think this is our 5th or 6th year working together, because initially it was really, I started this thing 14 years ago in Guelph, transferred over to Dal, and made it a multi-institutional effort 5-6 years ago.
So let's start with the beginning. With one of the things I know you always do is you look at the last report and kind of mark yourself or judge yourself on your accuracy. You already mentioned that you kind of came within your acceptable. You were accurate. So give us a sense of how accurate last year's report was, just because that also informs people how accurate the overall report is, and then we'll get to 2024.
Yeah, no. So last year we were predicting an increase of 5 to 7% by the end of this year, and so we're at 5.9%. But we keep in mind we actually stopped the clock in September because we have to do the report and do the modeling and all that.
So is it September to September? Is that a fair?
Basically, that's basically it. Yeah, exactly. And because you have to stop the clock at some point, or else it's tough to get 4 institutions organized, because I lead 4 meetings with 4 forecasts, and building consensus with 30 people, 30 PhDs, it's not easy. So frankly, some of the stuff that's written in the report, it's not something I'm overly comfortable with. I'm okay with some of the material, because it's all about the team. Like the forecast itself, we are predicting a forecast of we are expecting food inflation to be anywhere between 2.5 to 4.5% by the end of this year. But I would say, I mean, some of the models we had were way over that, like way over that. I won't tell you which campus, but one of them actually was way over 7%.
Wow. And that number, I guess we're into the 2024 report. That number is on a basket of goods, because in the report you do break it down by food groups or commodities, and some are you expect, which is you would expect. I think it's beef. I think that is the highest. But give us a breakdown.
Meat products. Yeah, meat. That well. And so for 2024, 2.5 to 4.4 to 4.5%. The three categories which will drive food inflation, we expect, are vegetables, bakery, and meat products. And so I don't think meat products will make Canadians happy, but I mean, actually it makes sense when you look at beef prices right now with the drought affecting inventories out west. Pork prices have been depressed for a while. We had Vincent Breton on our podcast a few months ago, and things aren't necessarily great.
It's one of the things I was going to talk about later. There's an article in the news about a crisis in pork farming and pork production, and in particular in the province of Quebec.
Yeah, exactly. Some farmers are being bought out, and so basically the industry is recalibrating. Supplies are depressed, and so prices are going to start to rise again. Chicken affected by the avian flu a little bit. Costs have gone up, but generally speaking, chicken is actually going to increase slightly. So meat is going to be a problem. When it comes to vegetables, we actually believe that the dollar is going to be a factor in 2024. Yeah. We're expecting a weaker dollar versus the greenback. I mean, the Middle East is making us a little bit nervous, to be honest. If this thing escalates with Israel, oil can be an issue, and when oil is an issue, you know what happens to the dollar? It can go up or down. It depends, and that could actually impact commodity prices as well. So we're, if something happens in the Middle East in 2024, all bets are off, really. And
when you say something happened, obviously something horrendous has happened with the Hamas attack on Israel. But you're also saying that if the conflict widens, that's what you're worried about. How do you factor that into the model? You're worried about it. But does it factor into the percentage as a risk factor and therefore a little bit higher from a projection? Well,
geopolitics are hard to measure. Like Ukraine, for example, is another example. It's hard to understand because there are sanctions. So there's the event, like for example with Israel and Hamas, and then you have to wait and try to anticipate how decisions are going to be made, how the world will react. And often you see a lot of politics involved. You see sanctions, you see allies, and
because in and of itself, what's happening in between Israel and Hamas and Gaza isn't really going to affect the price of food for us. We don't really source much food there.
Not for now.
Not like Ukraine. I mean, the Ukraine has a pretty direct effect.
It had an effect. It had an effect, but we're over that now. I think the world has actually been able to figure out how to get grains out of the region without the Black Sea deal, and of course China has a lot to do with that. But in the case of Israel, I mean, I think the big factor is oil. I mean, and oil is actually a big deal in that region. So if oil is disrupted in some way, or the oil market is disrupted by what's going on in the Middle East in some way, then it's going to be harder to predict exactly what's going to happen to food prices in Canada and elsewhere.
And how do you factor in climate events? We've talked several times. I mean, I was just reflecting back on your even talked about the Mississippi River being low. I read the Suez Canal is low on water for the big super tankers. Is there some kind of weather climate impact affected into?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, actually, every year, do you know which network actually reads our report and actually wants to?
Probably the Weather Network, right?
The Weather Network, absolutely. Yeah, the Weather Network always calls us, and I got to tell you, Michael, a lot of people watch the Weather Network.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Everybody, you know what they say, everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Taking it all in, you're projecting that, I guess the news is a little more digestible. It's not coming down, though. It's still going up, right?
So prices are still going up. But here's the deal about 2024. So I think we're going to see the end of this so-called food inflation storm we're in. But you know what? I actually think that during the second half, with some verticals, things will tighten up. I actually expect, and we're already seeing it right now, I'm actually expecting grocers to fight it out and try to make people more loyal. I think in 2023 we all became millennials. Millennials aren't loyal for one bit, and so we've been shopping around. We've actually decided to let go of some brands. Everyone became millennials, not being loyal, and grocers will want us to become loyal again. And I think loss leaders are going to be back with a vengeance. There's going to be more discounts, more rebates. There's going to be also some generous loyalty programs. Here's the other thing I thought about. A few months ago, I think it was in June, Costco was announcing that it will likely increase membership fees by $10 by December 1st. Never happened. It never happened. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that they don't want to scare people off. They still want members to come. So I think the key battleground for 2024 for grocers is going to be loyalty, and we're going to benefit from that. And I actually am expecting some little mini price wars here and there in 2024, probably starting in June or July.
And what behavior do you expect from the manufacturers? I mean, 70% of what the grocers, 70% of the price of what the grocers sell arrives at the back door. Is there similar food fights about to break out on the manufacturer side as well, you think?
Well, I don't. I actually don't think a lot of things are going to change there. I mean, I think there's that the tug of war between suppliers and grocers are going to continue. We all know that in May of 2024, the code of conduct should be implemented. My guess is that it's on life support right now. I think we all know that. And because it's not going to be mandatory unless Ottawa makes it or forces the issue upon the industry, but I highly doubt. But I do think that CPG companies, suppliers will continue to fight it out, and it is going to be quite difficult, to be honest.
Interesting. All right. Any surprises? Anything you were surprised about in the report? Anything jump out at you?
Well, looking back at 2023, I got to say, I mean, I all year long, I was actually, and we spoke about this on the podcast all year round. I mean, for Q2 and Q3 specifically, consumers were spending less on food. Like I did not see that coming. Like I absolutely didn't, and I actually validated that. I validated the data with Nielsen IQ, and because at first I thought I was wrong. But people looking at data, were all seeing the same thing. We were all scratching our heads. So that was a big surprise. So what that meant for our report this year is that we had to go back in time, revise our dollar amount. And so the starting point for 2024 was not necessarily the one that we were predicting. So the percentage we got at 5.9%, but we actually missed. It was a huge miss for the dollar amount as a result of the fact that people weren't spending less.
And have we decided or come to some conclusion about what's happening? Are people eating less? Like, what's going on?
We don't know for sure.
Right. Are they wasting less? I mean, we don't.
Hypothesis that I'm hearing: people are wasting less. People are trading down. People are using different channels beyond the traditionals to buy food. Some people are saying it's the food banks. I don't buy that. Are people eating less?
But use is up 300%, right?
Yeah,
no?
It is. So that may actually be one reason, but I don't know that because we're talking about billions of dollars here.
Sure.
I mean, it's not the food rescuing industry is big, but not that big.
It's a factor. It wouldn't be the sole contributor to something like that.
Exactly.
But you would consider that one of several factors. But
exactly.
Okay. So last question. So if you had to say there's a bunch of factors in this. Maybe people are eating less. Maybe they're all on Ozempic and they're eating less. Maybe unfortunately, Ozempic. Maybe they're food insecure. Unfortunately, maybe they are being a little more smarter about because they listen to our podcast about best before dates and things like that. Are these all contributing factors to where you think the hypothesis builds?
I think so, yeah.
To that?
Okay. But in Q4, so I did talk to Nielsen IQ, and in Q4 we actually saw a pause. That trend has stopped. So people are starting to spend more again. I think it was really about, the 10 rate hikes in a row by the Bank of Canada. That was a huge, violent shock for a lot of people. And so they just retreated at the grocery store. But I think we're past that, and people are starting to adjust.
Let's move on from the report. We'll put a link into the show notes so you can actually get the report, right? It's published today, downloadable, lots of other great content in the report in both official languages. So maybe we'll come back to it. I'd love to talk to you next week about the general vibe.
And by the way, I do want to thank all of our partners, Guelph, UBC, and Saskatchewan. They've been terrific. We have in total 42 people working on this report. So the 30 co-authors plus the staff behind the scenes, doing all the work, the design, the writing, booking interviews, all that stuff. I mean, there's lots of people behind the scenes, and I do want to thank them all for all the work, because it wouldn't be possible without them. At the very beginning, 14 years ago, I was doing basically everything on my own, but the report wasn't what it is today. So, and frankly, without them, it wouldn't be possible to do what we're doing today.
All right, well, let's move on. So one of my favorite movies is Bon Cop, Bad Cop.
Bad Cop.
He's from Quebec.
Martin Ward.
David Butchard.
The subject was a true Quebecer. His heart is in Quebec.
Yes, but his ass belongs to you.
It's one of my all-time favorite movies. So many great lines. You're in Montreal.
The subject,
divorced, works about 75 hours a week, which I gather from Montreal is a lot.
But let's talk about Bon Cop, Bad Cop 28. The climate behemoth that, what is it now, 84,000 people and even more? I mean, the numbers keep going up.
Estimates are about 100,000, but if you actually add the green zones, it's up to 400,000. 400,000 people.
And so there's lots of controversy that people may have read about.
You think?
Anyway, these interviews coming out from the chair, the Petro State that's basically sponsoring it. We're not getting rid of any of that.
There's two ways to look at this. You either say, "Oh my goodness, that's so embarrassing to see the chair of the event signing oil deals and not recognizing the science that phasing out fossil fuels."
Al Gore, that was Al Gore. Al Gore was certainly tweaked up about it. He was like,
"Oh yeah, he was tweaked up." But you know what? I actually think that this probably is the first COP where we're actually seeing a debate. Like an actual debate on the issue. And so I know there's a huge delegation from Alberta, a huge delegation from Saskatchewan. So they're pretty involved in these discussions. So they can't say that they've been shut out. The thing about COPs in the past is that they tend to push away people who may not agree with environmental activists, but it seems as though in Dubai there's more of a balance. What the reason why Dubai I think is important for us is that it is the first time COP is giving a lot more attention to food in particular. That's the difference, and frankly I'm not sure they're going to do anything significant just because of the controversies that we're talking about.
I saw some stuff about methane limits and no eating meat. I mean, it seems to be, okay, let's talk about the good parts. I mean, some of what you're describing is the good parts, like a fulsome discussion from all kinds of sides about a very, obviously, probably the most important issue, but then on the other side, some nutty stuff coming out of there. And then again, on the positive side, like I was like, who the hell goes to this thing? And
what's nutty? What's nutty?
I just, I don't know. Some of the statements I've seen coming out of there are just,
of course,
stop eating meat and that,
But the methane deal, I don't know why they're making a big deal of the methane deal. We already signed a methane deal at Cop26. And the reason why I didn't feel it was important for me to go at Cop28 is we know what we need to do. I mean, in Paris in 2015, we have targets. We need to do something. So we've all agreed on targets, what we need to do. On methane at COP26, the deal was already there. So they're kind of refresh. It's a bit of a refresh on some of the deals that we've seen in the past. And do you need 100,000 people to go to the middle of the desert to be reminded of some of the things that are going on around the world? I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I did see that one of our former guests, who I have a ton of respect for, Christian Hebert, is there.
Yeah.
So that actually elevated the COP28 in my eyes. Like, oh, okay, there's serious people there talking about serious things. Otherwise, it looked like when you were invited to go.
You're not a fan of Al Gore?
I'm a big fan of Al Gore, but in the food world, I'm like, who's there? And they would have paid your full freight to go, right? Like, who funds all this stuff? Where does all this money come from?
Yeah, I know exactly.
Anyway, all right. So let's just, we'll talk about this again. But basically, what's the best thing so far that you think is coming out of COP28? Because it continues on for it's 6 months or something, right? So what's the best thing? What's the worst thing?
Well, I mean, the first day there was a declaration on food and gas emissions that was signed by 134 countries, including Canada. But it was just a declaration. It was quite aspirational, really, not detailed. I don't know if you looked at it, but it didn't say let's stop eating meat. The problem with that, Michael, is that some groups, as you know, will take that declaration and say, well, we need to stop eating meat. And that becomes a problem because food is personal, food is cultural, food is traditional. I mean, it's just, and that's when the environmental agenda is really making a lot of people feel uncomfortable. And my latest op-ed this week on COP28 is exactly about that.
Okay.
I think we need to focus on making sure that we are decarbonizing the food economy, but to compromise our ability to honor our traditions and culture as a community of citizens. I mean, let's face it, in Canada, we have a rich history around animal proteins. We have supply management. It's all about animal proteins. I mean, seriously, we have policies in place to support very important sectors in our economy, like cattle, like pork, like supply management, the SM5s. We need to keep that in mind and not to go too far. So that's the one thing that concerns me when I see some of these things happening. And the methane deal to me was just, cow farts. Yeah, we need to deal with them, I guess.
Remember when Ronald Reagan actually said that it contributed more or less, and he was actually kind of right, but people mocked him for saying
but it was too early. It was too early.
People weren't thinking. I did notice that it wasn't Nestle Danone is a signature. Big Six signed on to what's called the Dairy Methane Alliance or something like that, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on to some other stuff. I was noticing that Kraft Dinner was in the news for two reasons this week. Two reasons. One was that they announced there's a plant-based, no dairy cheese version, and I have to admit, I didn't think that was cheese to begin with. I know, I don't know.
I actually, like you, I actually learned that there was dairy in the former
what?
PD.
Is there?
Wow.
Now, by the way, for all the Kraft people
honestly,
listening,
you shut down the lights, it glows in the dark. Kid you not.
And if anybody knows me, they all know I actually love Kraft Dinner. So not to bust on Kraft Dinner, but
have you ever explained to a European what KD is? After a couple of sentences, they go, "What?
Well,
people eat that?"
Listen, they got their own weirdness. Two things. One is a Kraft Dinner, plant-based Kraft Dinner, which I'm like, hey, that's great. I guess I'm going to give it a try because I'm kind of curious. And then two, they got caught with their hands in the pasta jar a little bit with a bit of shrinkflation on the
25
latest.
grams.
And then there was this big story that came out, and I'm kind of segueing to another big story with the folks from Cheerios, who someone actually measured how much Cheerios was in a box, and they were like way off.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
Way off. And you know what was interesting to me was that they got caught red-handed, and the stuff's been on the shelves for months, and their response was, yeah, the packaging's wrong, but by January, February, the packaging will phase its way out, and yeah, we made a bit of a mistake. Isn't there laws against this kind of thing where you say it's one thing and it turns out to be another? Like, you think they'd have a little bit more, geez, we need to relabel the boxes or get it off the shelf? I mean, I don't want to waste food, but isn't there some kind of laws against this stuff?
Well, in terms of in Cheerios, in the case of Cheerios, it was the General Mills actually claimed that it was a one-time mistake.
Okay, it's still on the shelves for 4 months, convincing people it's literally like 50% more that like.
But it is essentially food fraud, because food fraud is really about mislabeling, and so. There's nothing wrong selling less, and shrinkflation is not illegal,
right?
As long as you actually put on the package the accurate information.
Before we get to our interview with Alex Green, Michael Medline's testifying Monday in front of a bunch of political characters.
Did you watch it?
I did not watch it.
I watched it.
But if I knew,
I'm a geek. I'm a policy geek, so I watch these things.
If I had planned my day better, so I didn't know ahead of time. But if I had planned my day better, I do like watching Michael speak. He's so very articulate and
he's very authentic.
Well, any senior grocer, any senior retailer, I'll watch anytime because they're all very, very smart people. But But anyway, so I missed it. So any comments on what was he there to, was he just back testifying about what they're going to do about stuff and give us the full
he actually mentioned my name once or twice, which was, it's true actually.
Was there any cussing before or after that when he said that?
No,
that effing Sir LeBois.
No, I think he did a good job overall, but he was banging on that code of conduct drum quite a bit.
Yeah,
quite a bit.
He's a fan of it, just so that everyone is
as I am. I'll admit that I am a big fan. In fact, it's in our report, Canada's Food Price Report. As a group of 30 people, we wanted to endorse the code of conduct. We are recommending that if we are to aspire to increase competition in this country, it's one of the things we need to think about. And so I agree with Michael on that one. And but overall, I thought it was a civilized session because Jackman Singh wasn't there, and it really helped. They actually had a conversation, and so it was actually much more pleasant to watch than last time.
All right. Well, I guess they tape these kind of things, right? I
was supposed to testify on Monday, December 11th, but I postponed it because I'm actually going to be out of the country. So,
okay.
So I'm going to be back in January.
All right. So you'll be back in January, and does this thing ever end? This testifying, is there an end point to this?
These sessions are about stabilizing prices, okay. Whatever the hell that means.
Are they just going to keep calling them to Ottawa until they say uncle, or until they what's the it's a serious question. What's the end point to this? What's the point of arrival?
You shouldn't be asking me because I have no idea, because I've always and I've said that to Minister Champagne, is that I actually think that the problem is resolving itself despite Ottawa, to be honest. I mean, all due respect, I actually think that we're going in the right direction. Don't do anything and we'll be okay. But they want to do something to show.
Well, they could do something. I mean, we've talked on this show, they could actually do something.
Of course they do. They can do something,
but they still haven't done anything. I mean, anyway, don't get me started on this. They just call everybody there, and they don't. It's not productive from their perspective, anyway. All right. Well, listen. Let's take a break now from the news, and let's get to our fantastic interview with Alex Green from Longo's. Alex, welcome to the Food Professor Podcast here live at the Coffee Association Conference. How the heck are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
That's great.
Look, it's a real treat to have you on the mic. So for those who don't know of you, we're going to talk about what you were just talking about on the stage and a bunch of other stuff.
And Alex is not the first Longo joining us on our show.
He is not. Ooh. We've had Jenny Longo has been on the show talking about the great work she does in private label. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your background and what you do for a living?
Yeah, my name is Alex Green. I'm currently the Chief Experience Officer at Longo's. I've been there a little over 6 years. As the Chief Experience Officer, I'm really sort of responsible for two main things. I mean, one is I spend a lot of time with a cross-functional team trying to get to a really clear definition of what is our competitive strategy and how do we translate that into a great guest experience? Because if we know what that is and we know how we can create value, then we get much more aligned strategically as an organization. And then the other side is, rolling up my sleeves and leveraging my marketing background really to drive out, how that's expressed through store design, through our marketing and go-to-market. We do a lot of work on in-store experiences like demo programs and cooking schools. We have a vibrant loyalty program and all the analytics that come out of that.
Yep.
So it's trying to knit all of those things together and being a champion for the team and that guest experience. So
for the audience outside of Ontario who may not be familiar with Longo's, could you tell us a little bit more about your network? How many stores do you have and the story behind Longo's in general?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
Longo's has been in business largely in Southern Ontario. It started in Toronto. It's a little over 65 years old, and it was founded by three Italian immigrants, three brothers. Yep. And they started with a single fruit market downtown Toronto, and it was built on just a handful of really simple principles. They're very entrepreneurial. They've got a huge passion for fresh and produce in particular, which was the starting point, and then a couple of basic principles like treating people like family, only offering something to one of our guests that you would offer to your own family, and just these things that allowed us to create and scale in this family to go from this single store up to 38 stores that we have now.
Yep.
Built around this great guest experience. It's largely anchored in fresh, so we're very fanatical about fresh. It started with tons of momentum and expertise around produce, but that's expanded into meat and seafood, bakery, deli, prepared foods, kitchen.
Yep.
And then, that's really the heart of what makes the experience of Longo's unique. And then it's...
Fun fact for you.
Okay, please.
So I used to teach at Guelph, at University of Guelph, before going to Dal. I ran, I taught the capstone course of the MBA program in agribusiness.
Okay, great.
And so I basically did a live case study with a company, coming into class, telling my students, you got a week to fix this problem, like a real problem. So did some live case studies with Pepsi, Nestle, Coca-Cola, and one time with Longo.
That's great.
But the difference with Anthony, because I was dealing with Anthony, is that he wanted absolutely the class to be delivered in Vaughan at head office.
That's great.
So we were busing in from Guelph, the entire class, every day for 5 days to teach that class at Longo's. And let me tell you, Gus was there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so great because you felt you were part of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is so who Longo's is, right? Like a huge part of what makes Longo's successful is this really strong culture, these great team members that all live those values every day. And it's really unique. And I know just in terms of my own experience, it's been totally unique. I've worked for lots of great organizations.
You came from more of a food service background, if I remember. Then you food service, and then Longo's CMO, and then now the more all-encompassing role, right?
Yeah. So my career started in advertising, so sort of like storytelling and go-to-market. And then I spent a lot of time at entrepreneurial Canadian food service companies. And then, 6 years ago, made the move to grocery. And the best part has been the culture and the entrepreneurial spirit of Longo's. It's really fast moving. It's really hands on. They live those values of treating people like family with care and warmth, and that translates into the guest experience as well as what it feels like to work there every day.
And it's been a busy couple of years for Longo's because now you're part of a partnership, which I'm sure in some ways, I mean it's kind of your same partner bought a former competitor, but now a fellow company, Farm Boy, and the big emphasis, I'm from Ottawa where Farm Boy came from, and the big emphasis and the message loud and clear back to the Empire Group and Michael Medline was don't screw it up.
Yeah.
Like, I love my farm boy. And I don't think that was a new lesson for the leadership, but it feels the same for Longo's. Like, you got it for a reason. Your partner's for a reason. Don't homogenize the experience. Is that very much the conversations on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that sums it up really well. I mean, the connection and the relationship with Empire has been great. The culture and the fit around the values has been very aligned. But essentially, we're still run as an independent company.
Yeah.
And the only time we integrate is when there's the chance where we all see those shared benefits and we can create more value for our guests and more value for the business. So I think Grocery Gateway is a really good example, right?
Yeah. That's integrated now into
That's
Voilà,
now integrated
right?
into Voilà.
Yeah.
So we still have, the ability to deliver, all of our Longo's products and deliver those experiences to our guests. We're now leveraging this much more scaled and efficient platform. That's Voilà to be able to do it. So that's a really nice example of the win-win. But mostly they sort of, they let us do our thing and they help us out where they can.
Yeah. Here's a big pencil to buy some real estate.
So let's talk about, the topic of the day, the topic of the year, inflation.
Yeah.
It impacts marketing for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, so let me ask, from your standpoint, how do you think inflation has impacted your business, your customers at Longo's generally?
It's a tough time to be a consumer. I mean, we've talked a lot about it at the conference today. I mean, the broad inflation across all areas of the economy, the crunch from the higher interest rates and the number of mortgages that are being renewed. I mean, I think every consumer has felt the reduction in their buying power. So it is a real challenge, and it's impacting food security for a lot of Canadians. There was a stat from the Canadian Bread Food Bank that showcased that visits to the food bank were up 50% leading up to
the hunger count. Yeah. And
So
we spoke about that on the podcast.
So it's a real challenge that many Canadians are experiencing. So I don't know. I mean, we absolutely are trying to figure out how to best shift our business to respond to that. So for us, that's doubling down on key programs that help us get food back into our communities for those in need. So we're big sort of leaders on programs like Neighbor in Need, which is all about getting the right food, the high demand food into local food banks. We're big proponents twice a year around Toonies for Tummies, which is meals for kids at school that show up and don't necessarily have that food security to start the day properly. So doubling down on those. And then it's about how do we create more value within the experiences that we're creating for our guests. So, we talked a little bit earlier about Jenny and all the great work that Jenny's been leading on private label. We're more aggressive on private label than we've ever been before in terms of its ability.
And you've got multi-layered private label now, whereas before you had the Curado line, and now you've got kind of a more base. I don't know what you call it internally, but a more basic
essentials.
line. Essentials.
It's like essentials. This is stuff you just got to check off your list. They're commoditized products. You want to be out there with the best price possible. So making sure that's a big part of our assortment, so that we've got the convenience.
How many private label products do you have in your portfolio, approximately?
Several thousand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a lot.
Really lean into that, and that's another example where our partnership with Empire has also really helped us in terms of network and connection. Same thing with Farm Boy in terms of how we can build more momentum against.
You have some synergies with Farm Boy.
There's
you work with Farm Boy.
There's connections across the team in terms of where are the best practices, where can we create more value.
Let's talk about coffee for a bit. As I walk the aisles of a Longo's, you got a very rich coffee section with lots of different brands. How do you view what you want to put on the shelf from what consumers are asking for? You got a lot of great data, as you said. You got a rewards program. You can load it up yourself all the way to bespoke. Fair trade coffees. How do you see that part of the aisle, and how do you think about that? And what were you sharing here in front of all the coffee people talking about that particular beverage?
We offer a variety of coffee experiences in the context of Longo's. So we have our traditional sort of retail set. We have a lot of Starbucks integrated into our stores, and then we also have our sort of proprietary in-house locally roasted program, which is Aromatech. So I think for us, it's trying to find the right mix and balance between those three things. They're typically quite different sort of journeys and occasions for guests. But it's the alchemy of tuning those up to those different journeys that I think is creating the momentum within our business, within the coffee segment. I have to admit, I'm most excited about some of the results and the traction that we're seeing around programs like Aromatay. If you have the opportunity to visit our Leaside store, which is an absolutely fantastic shopping experience, we have a great team member there, John, who's he will custom roast coffee for you, and it's a really cool experience. Our guests love it. It creates real distinction and like a bond both to that store and the experience. He'll have it ready for you the next week when you come back in. So
that's great. It's part of your AI ideas there.
That's right. Is it at the right temperature?
Yeah.
Can't replace that skill.
It's funny. But to your point of you can't replace that skill. I think as AI is changing things so quickly, and it's actually very democratized in how accessible it is.
Yeah.
I think that those more human experiences are going to become increasingly valuable. So when we chart out the next few years, yes, I think AI will help us optimize that assortment to make sure we have the right brands at the right prices for what our guests are looking at that moment, and that'll continue to flex and evolve. But I think the real distinction for us and the real value over time, we have a very strong culture. It's about team members and how we treat people. It's the Johns of the world that I think will be at the forefront of how we create growth, and we create this really healthy ecosystem of stores and communities and guests around experiences.
So you've got you just opened up a store in Brooklyn, out in the east.
Yeah.
You've got a new store North Mississauga. You got a big one coming in South Mississauga.
Yeah,
you got a lot going on. You integrated.
How many stores in Mississauga?
This will be 6 by the time you're done, 6 or 7, right? A lot.
Oh my God,
yeah, it's a big community. Integrated, as you said, Gersha Gateway into a lot going on. How do you see innovation from your perspective, and what you're overseeing the experience of shopping in the stores? I remember talking to Anthony a bunch of years ago. He said, we don't see self-serve in our locations, but in Applewood, they're there, and I love them sometimes. But other times, I'll give you an example. I go every Friday morning. I bring my 90-year-old mom shopping at Longo's every Friday morning.
Wow.
She pushes the cart around. It's the perfect size for it. It's Applewood.
Great.
And she likes it because she likes to talk to the cashiers, the associates. I mean, in Europe, the cashiers sit down and there's a chat lane.
Yeah.
Are you thinking of these things, these kind of innovations as you, not just to make the store physically bigger. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's one thing to make the store physically bigger, expand the offerings, make it more, all those kind of things. Yeah.
If a store would do it in Canada, it would be Longo's, that approach.
Yeah. How do you think of, without kind of giving away the trade secrets, how do you think about innovation as you think about, I got a bigger footprint to work with, what else can we do? What do we try? Yeah. Where do we try it? How do we try it? How do we measure it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I've got a couple of thoughts. I mean, I think your example of the self-checkouts is a great one, right? It's that, we were originally do our guests really want that? Is that going to work in our experience? But for about 30% of transactions and guests, they love it.
Yeah.
So how do we create the right balance so we're optimized for those different guests and what they need and want? And the opportunity for us in something like that is that's actually going to free up a bunch of labor that we can then invest in other areas where it can create value. And that's the balance. So how can we better service our guests and align it with what they want? We are spending a lot of time working on our store experience and how we have continued to evolve. And we've got lots of new stores in the pipeline, and that's super exciting. Brooklyn was great. It was a good reminder. It opened strong. The guests really wrapped their arms around us in terms of the community, and it's
a neighborhood out in Whitby.
But
for other listeners, it's a neighborhood in Whitney versus south of Manhattan.
That's
right.
Just outside of Toronto.
That's right. Just outside.
Yeah, bedroom community.
Yeah.
So we know we do a lot of things really well. We have modernized our design system a lot over the last 6 years.
Sure, signage is all
signage,
those things.
The material choices, the lighting. So I don't know, what's been really great about that feedback is it's given us a chance to step back and say, well, what could it be? What if we wanted to bring more of the warmth of a traditional market feel into the design of the experience?
What would that look like?
So that gets us into materials, lighting, layout. How would we set our team members up to be more service-oriented versus task-oriented? Mm-hmm. So how do we make sure every time you come to our cheese island with 300-plus cheeses from all over the world, that the right person is there with the right knowledge to be like, can I help you? What do you need?
Yeah.
So I think there are areas where we can improve in that front. And I think that's what we're really excited about going after as we think about some of these new stores, to innovate and build and get reconnected to the warmth of the values and the service. And I also think like the freshness and the organic feel you get in a market. So I think there's some really interesting work, and that touches on how we merchandise. That touches on what our produce tables look like. It's the chance to just sort of polish up this diamond and really take it to the next level, all built around that experience. Because I think the warmth of that experience and how it makes people feel and the trust and the connection is going to be such a huge part of how this brand continues to grow and thrive.
To flourish, because you're flourishing now.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Well, listen, Alex, thank you so much for joining us on the Food Professor podcast. It's been great, and it's clear that you're enjoying your journey at Longo's. And so congratulations on your success, and hope to see you again.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So, it's been a great episode so far. A couple of little things to wrap it up. Do you believe in ghosts, paranormal ghosts?
I believe in you.
Well, article out in CNN talking about the demise of ghost kitchens. At a point where we thought, I remember you and I talked, because, this is a COVID project that this was a big thing. You could, create a brand virtually. You just put it up on Skip or Uber Eats. Wow, this is great. And it turns out it doesn't work. It turns out that people saw through it, and the business is collapsing. So there's a couple of big restaurant chains in the U.S., a couple of big hotel chains that said, okay, I'm going to fund this. And they've all wrapped up. There's a startup that sucked up some private equity money that was going to be the powering of this. And it's all flaming out. So I color me a little bit surprised that people would say, no, listen, I want to see that there's chairs. I want to see you physically exist. And so there's, I guess, some skepticism. And does that surprise you? I thought it would be a longer term trend than what I'm reading.
I'm surprised that we're actually burying the concept already. I think there is a future for that concept. It's too early to tell. I mean, I actually do think that there is something there with real estate prices and everything that's going on with the food service industry. You go where the money is. People will actually be eating more, will be dining out more at home. And so the concept of ghost kitchens, I actually think has merit over time. So I do see favorable conditions for the model. So I wouldn't bury the model right away, to be honest.
Well, I tell you, Kroger's burying the model. They launched their Kitchen United, which was backed by Kroger and $175 million.
But Kroger's a grocer.
Wendy's and Applebee's. So Applebee's folded up Cosmic Wings. So a bunch of people are exiting it. Maybe that's you and me. Maybe that's our retirement plan right there. We're going to go counter trend.
Exactly.
We're going to get into ghost
food from the farm in Mississauga.
Food from the farm from Mike and Sauvins. There you go. All right. Well, listen, great episode. Let's leave it there. I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer growth consultant, podcaster, keynote speaker, and you are?
I'm the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois.
Coming to us from the beautiful Montreal. Safe travels, and we'll get on the mic, and I want to hear all about it next week.
All right. Take care.
Enchanté. Enchanté. Hey, on est tombé sur un gars qui peut parler le français.